Hey there, Cat Matlock here at Free Body, and I'm going to show you today some great ways to do some releasing in your hamstrings, some self-trigger point release. Before I get to that, I'm always going to invite you to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell to get notifications. I'm putting out a lot of videos and information, tons of it coming out, so you hit the bell so you'll get notified, join the community. If this work is helpful to you, drop a comment. Let us know how you're doing with the work. If you have any questions, drop a comment. I'm happy to help. So let's get into releasing our hamstrings. Anytime you're going to release parts of your body where there's a lot of tension or a lot of stickiness, start slow, start small, and kind of work in layer by layer. Because if you go in with a really hard ball, like a lacrosse ball or something like that, your body's going to resist. It's going to be like, oh, what's going on here? So you could start with, I have these very soft balls. This is the ball that's missing with a lot of folks in their self-trigger point release, self-myofascial release work. So what you could do is just scoop back and lean against a wall. Get that ball, a soft ball or a big ball underneath the hamstrings, and just wave your leg side to side. And what you're doing is, by starting soft, you're really like stepping into the nervous system. You're kind of courting the nervous system instead of blasting through your tissue. Your skin is filled with sensory receptors. The tissue just deep to your skin, the superficial fascia, filled with sensory receptors. Your muscles, full of sensory receptors, right? So if you just jam a lacrosse ball, which is basically a round stone, into your hamstrings without really giving them a little bit of time to even get used to the idea, kind of barreling through those early layers, those superficial layers, not going to work so good. So then once you've spent some time with a softer ball, you could use a firmer ball. This is a myofoam ball. This is technically their medium ball. And go a little bit more. So sticking with a bigger ball is going to be a little less intense for the tissue. It's a broader contact on your tissue. And so it's going to be a little less invasive in a way to your body. So switching to a bigger ball is just a little bit less intense for your tissue. You're using a bigger ball. Now it's a little firmer of the ball. I like to do a 3-step process. And again, now we're just sinking in a little more deeply into the tissue, not trying to shock the tissue into submission. That actually doesn't work. So I'm just going side to side. What I'm doing here with this side to side movement is really helping those hamstrings to separate from each other. And just that little bit, we didn't even do any self-trigger point release yet, but I want to do a little stretch and just check and see if I feel a difference between the two sides. And I already do. I already feel that this right side is a little bit freer than the left. So we're going to do that warm up on the left side now. Just starting with the softest ball that you have. This is a 4-inch like toy ball that I have made for this work. And it's an air-filled ball. So you can even pump a little more air into it to make it a little firmer, or take a little air out to make it a little softer. And you can use it at different levels of firmness. And then after you do a little bit with that really soft ball, then bringing in a firmer, larger ball, because the larger the ball, the less specific the contact. And sometimes that's just what your body needs. It needs like a bigger compression, larger compression into the tissue can be really soothing to the body, to the nervous system. And so with this firmer ball, getting in there and kind of separating the different lines of the hamstrings, 4 hamstrings, 2 heads biceps femoris on the outside, 2 heads of 1 head semimembranosus, one semitendinosus on the inside or medial hamstrings, those 4 hamstring muscles. Bend the knee and also lift the leg up and back in extension with glute max. So now we've got both sides kind of generally warmed up, and do a little fold to check. It feels better. Already feeling better. Just that little bit of separation, little bit of hydration, super important. So now we're going to get real specific. We're going to get this ball, the small myofoam ball, still has give, right? It's nice density because it's a little bit softer. I recommend you err on the side of soft with your rolling as opposed to firm. Some studies have shown that you can actually damage your tissue, even create little tears with things like a lacrosse ball. So check out your tools and see, do you have enough balls that have give, that have some softness? Your body will enjoy communicating with that more. So to get more specific now in your hamstrings, if you sit up on a couple of blankets or pillows and grab a yoga block, or something like it. You could use a Tupperware container. Even a saucepan works really well if you don't have a yoga block. You could take that smaller ball. Now the trigger points and the tension tends to gather about halfway down and then down toward the knee. So we're going to start sitting up on the blankets. Just gives your body a little bit more space. If you have tense hamstrings, you're going to be rounding if you're trying to sit on the floor. So you can sit up higher and then support the ball on a block. So now, going a little side to side with the smaller ball. And now I'm going to start accessing the outer or the lateral hamstrings more specifically. That left leg can just get out of the way. It can be off to the side. You can fold so that you're doing like a runner stretch. So here's the thing. We want to get to the outer hamstrings, and then we want to get to the medial hamstrings. So we have to turn the foot, turn the thigh a little bit to get real specific in those areas. So to get into the outer hamstrings, you drop the knee out laterally a little bit. Foot follows out laterally a little bit. I'll turn just a little bit sideways there so that we're getting more that lateral line of the hamstrings. And you just kind of sink in. Notice if there's some tension there. And you can just slowly move the ball around. How about this spot? And then if you need more pressure, you can stretch over it. That's going to lay your body weight more over the ball and sinking your tissue more deeply into that ball. You can also do a little bit of movement. So when you are releasing your trigger point, self-trigger point release, you can add some movement in, engaging the muscles, stretching it up and down. So that would be lifting the foot and dropping it back down to bend the knee. That's going to stretch your hamstrings. Bending the knee is going to engage the hamstrings a little bit. So we just lift. And then we move the ball around. That feels better to me. That opened up my hamstrings a little bit. I'm getting down now where it gets a little more tendinous. I don't want to go too deep into those tendons. So I'm going to drop that knee off to the side, making sure I'm still staying on those outer hamstrings. So I'll show it this way. So here I am staying on those outer hamstrings still. Oh, it feels so good. And then if you want, you can like really lean up into it, get over the ball, get your weight over your body, compressing down into that little ball. Oh, so good, so tender. Straighten, bend, straighten, bend, straighten, bend. The movement should not be real slow. If you're like, oh, you want to just kind of move it, kind of floss that tissue underneath the ball. Great, I got a few key points in those outer hamstrings. Now I'm going to turn my body so that I can get the medial or the inner hamstrings. So to do that, now I'm going to have to drop the knee medially. I'm going to have to drop the knee inward. Now the yoga block is magnificent because if you need more pressure, you can just step it up like that. I'm using a rad block. See all those openings there for their tools. But here I can drop that inner hamstring. That might be too much for you. Go ahead and drop the down, but let the foot and the knee rotate in a little bit. then you're going to be isolating the different lines of hamstring tissue. And then you can lay over it. You can even cross the other leg over that side. And that weight of the second leg kind of pressing down gives a little bit more weight. Sometimes I like to do a little movement, a little wiggle. Sometimes I just want to do a stretch and sink and allow my body to sink down, allowing the ball to sink in through layer after layer. So start with the soft ball, go with a little firmer ball, and then go with a smaller ball. This would be a much more complete release of the hamstrings instead of just a quick fix where you might just spend a minute on each leg. And that's beneficial, that's helpful. But if you're having chronic problems that you need to release your hamstrings more completely for, this is the way that you want to do it, step by step. Oh, it feels so good. And it feels so good. Hamstrings love to be released. They really do. It just feels so good because the hamstrings have such a play with all the rest of the body. If your hamstrings are short and restricted, it can affect every other part of your body. All right, that's the last spot. Just do 5 or 6 spots, 3 on the lateral hamstrings, 3 on the medial hamstrings. Give yourself a little hamstring stretch. When you stretch your hamstrings, you want to press your heel into the floor. If you are doing it on the floor, press the heel into the floor, engage those hamstrings, lengthen your body really tall, rising up and out of the pelvis, rib cage reaches, back of the ribs rise, and then bowing forward, little engagement of that heel into the floor. Ah, feels so good. And then now we're going to switch sides, doing our more specific releasing now in the left side. See, I'm sitting up on those blankets. It just makes it a lot easier. We're going to start right in the middle. So I'm halfway between the pelvis and the knee and the back of the thigh, starting right there with those hamstrings. And I like to take now the small ball and go side to side, just like I began with the softer, and then the larger, firmer, and then now the smaller, firmer ball. And these balls, I'm telling you, still have give. I'm not using a lacrosse ball. Please don't. Please don't. We can talk more about that another time. So now I want to get into the outer hamstrings, right? So I'm going to drop that knee off to the side, get the ball more to the outside. So here's where the ball is. It's more on this outer line of the hamstrings, and then we're going to go the inner line. So staying on this outer line to be able to get that pressure, dropping the knee out to the side, then bowing forward. If you don't find a really tender spot there, just move the ball around slightly. Let's see, is that, oh yeah, that's a really tender spot. So just give yourself permission to move that ball a little bit to the left, little to the right, little up, little down, exploring, because trigger points are specific. They're points. So sometimes when you're getting into an area, oh, that feels so good. It just kind of opened up and the ball sank a little more deeply. You might feel that everything feels tender, right? And so that's when there's been so much protective tension gathering around a trigger point that just feels like a mass of tension. That will go away slowly and surely. It will go away with a little bit of regular attention. Ooh, these lateral hamstrings on the left side I'm just feeling it so much. So I'm finding a second point. You might be on a third point. You want to hold, you want to sink, you want to relax your whole body, you want to soften your jaw. Maybe you want to straighten and bend and straighten and bend, straighten and bend, straighten and bend. Just do that a few more times. That's feeling better to me now. That tension is starting to ease up. Feels better. And then now I'm going to switch to medial or inner hamstrings. I'm going to take this leg out to the side so that I can drop the other knee in. Now I'm not fully in my inner thighs. I'm just coming around that medial side of the back of the thigh. So the knee drops inward. So good getting the semimembranosus, semitendinosus. And here's a little information about that semitendinosus. Semitendinosus is one of the muscles that attaches below the inner knee. So if you're having inner knee pain, this would be a really helpful practice for you. And then I'm just going to move that ball and block down. Do I want to lean forward and get a little more pressure into the ball? Do you want to like straighten and bend, straighten and bend, straighten and bend? Do you want to just wiggle? Do you want to just sink? And breathe. It feels a lot better now. So we're going to try to find one more spot. Just moving around, exploring. Ooh, there's going to be a good spot. Oh, I found it. Good spot. Medial hamstring, so my knee is rotated inward a little bit, bowing forward a little bit to get a little more weight and pressure on the ball. A few breaths here. And we're going to back off that. Put the ball and the block off to the side. We're going to do a little stretch here. So straightening out that left leg. You can, of course, bend the knee a little bit if you need. That's totally fine, especially if, as you go forward, you're only feeling the stretch in the joints, at the attachments behind the knee or up at the sitting bone. You want to bend the knee a little bit so that you take some of the pull out of the tendons. Don't give yourself tendonitis with your stretching, okay? Then also you want to activate the muscle. There's a whole lot of reasons for that. For now, just trust me on that. Press the heel into the floor. Little tiny bend in the knee, tilting the pelvis back, lengthening through the entirety of your spine, crown of the head reaching up, and then bowing forward, keeping that activation of the heel a little bit into the floor. You're not, trying to dig a hole with your heel. You just want to get the hamstrings engaged. I promise you they'll unravel and lengthen much better if there's a little bit of engagement there. Bowing forward, let's just take 2 long, slow, deep breaths in the belly. One more. Great. And then we're going to come on up, move off the blankets, put those off to the side, and then we just do a little shaking out of the legs, cleaning out the hip joint a little bit with the top of the femur. And that's it for releasing the hamstrings on the floor. Step by step, releasing the hamstrings on the floor. Now you could spend 10 more minutes longer than I did. You could spend 10 minutes less. Just do a little bit. Just remember to err on the side of gentle, of softer, especially if you're doing a quicker fix with the hamstrings. So if you like this hamstring video, it's helpful, please hit like, please put a comment below, let us know how you're doing. Subscribe to the channel, and also I have a ton of online classes, really helpful online classes for hips, for hip flexors, extensors, iliotibial band issues, all of those things. You can check out the website, and the links are in the description. Thanks so much.